There was once a plant so remarkable that it was valued at the same price as silver, yet it disappeared from the face of the planet for over 2,000 years. To the Romans, Silphium was a botanical marvel, a medicine that could prevent pregnancy with a single dose, cure the most stubborn infections, and transform a common cut of meat into a dish fit for a god. It was a plant so essential to the ancient world that its image was stamped onto the currency of empires. Yet, by the time the Emperor Nero sat on the throne just 100 years later, the plant had mysteriously vanished. Some people believe that it was the first recorded instance of an anthropogenic extinction, a plant so sought after that it was literally consumed into oblivion. For 2,000 years, Silphium was a myth, a hollow name in the texts of Pliny and Theophrastus. But in 2021, a scientist in the mountains of Turkey made a discovery that rewrote the history of this plant. In this video, we're going to explore the mysterious powers of Silphium, its miraculous rediscovery, and how we can all benefit from the plant that the Romans valued more highly than gold. The story of Silphium begins in Cyrenaica, a 125-mile strip of North African coastline in modern-day Libya. Greek colonists from the island of Thera, now known as Santorini, landed here in the 7th century before Christ. It was a unique ecological bubble, a high-altitude steppe that received a blanket of moisture while the surrounding desert withered. It was here, and only here, that Silphium grew. The plant was a giant golden-flowered fennel, but its physiology defied every law of ancient agriculture. The Greeks, and later the Romans, were master farmers, yet somehow they could not domesticate Silphium. They first tried to transplant it to the Greek mainland, but it died. They then attempted to cultivate it in the gardens of Italy, and it withered. It was a wild, stubborn creature of the Libyan soil that refused to grow anywhere else. Because it could not be farmed, it became the ultimate commodity of scarcity. The kings of Cyrene realized early on that they were sitting on a geological gold mine, so they established a total state monopoly. The crown controlled the harvest, the processing, and the distribution. The wealth it generated was so vast that Cyrene became one of the most affluent cities in the Mediterranean. The Arcesila's cup, an ancient Greek vase, depicts a scene where the king himself is supervising the weighing and packing of the Silphium resin. By the time Rome annexed the region, Silphium had moved from a luxury spice to a vital national security interest. When the Roman state took over, the plant was no longer sold by the bushel. It was weighed by the ounce, and the resin was stored in the imperial treasury alongside the gold reserves. For the Romans, Silphium had infinite uses, but some believe one of the most important has something to do with the stereotypical symbol of a heart. From an early age, we are taught that this heart symbol represents the human organ, but the human heart looks nothing like that stylized curve. Some historians and archaeobotanists believe this symbol has more in common with the shape of a Silphium seed than our internal organs. You see, it is believed that one of the main uses of Silphium in ancient Rome was as a tool for reproductive sovereignty. Soranus of Ephesus, the greatest gynecologist of antiquity, described it as a potent morning-after herb. It is alleged that a woman could take a dose of the resin once a month, and it would prevent implantation or induce the shedding of the uterine lining. It was a safe, effective, and highly sought-after contraceptive in a world where pregnancy was often a death sentence. Because of this, some believe that the heart-shaped seed became the universal icon of love, intimacy, and sexual freedom. On Cyrenian coins, you see the heart-shaped seed alongside a woman pointing toward the plant. It was a visual shorthand for a life lived without the fear of unwanted consequences. This plant gave humanity a level of control over their own biology that would not be matched until the invention of the birth control pill nearly 2,000 years later. But Silphium was far more than just a contraceptive. It was a panacea, a miracle cure for a multitude of diseases and infections. Hippocrates, the father of medicine, used it as a febrifuge and a treatment for hernias, but it was used to treat epilepsy, respiratory infections, and even baldness. It was a powerful anti-inflammatory and antibacterial agent. While in the kitchen, it became the pinnacle of Roman haute cuisine. The resin was grated over braised meats and delicate seafood, providing a garlicky, aromatic punch that was said to be superior to any other spice on earth. To the Romans, Silphium was the perfect resource. It was food, medicine, and freedom, and that is exactly why it was doomed. When the Roman Republic took control of Cyrenaica, they replaced the sustainable, managed harvest of the Greek kings with the predatory greed of the publicani, private contractors who paid the Roman state up front for the right to collect taxes and resources in the region. The publicani were not interested in the long-term health of a species or people. They had contracts to fulfill and profits to maximize. They began by over-harvesting the roots. Because Silphium was a perennial that likely grew from a slow-maturing rootstock, digging up the roots for a quick profit meant the plant could never regrow. But the final blow likely didn't come from a shovel, but rather from sheep. Roman gourmets discovered that sheep that grazed on Silphium developed meat that was incredibly tender and possessed a pre-seasoned aromatic quality. And this meat commanded astronomical prices in the Roman markets. Ranchers began to drive their flocks into the protected meadows where Silphium grew. The livestock ate the young stalks before they could mature and produce seeds. By the mid-1st century after Christ, the plant had been scavenged into oblivion. Pliny the Elder recorded that only a single stalk was found in all of Cyrenaica during his lifetime. It was plucked as a curiosity and sent to Emperor Nero as a final tribute to a lost age. And with that, the first recorded extinction in human history was complete. The morning after herb was gone, and the heart-shaped seed was now just a symbol of a memory lost. For the next 2,000 years, the Silphium was relegated to the realm of myth, like Atlantis or the Fountain of Youth. Most botanists assumed that the unique microclimate of Cyrenaica had changed, or that the plant was a sterile hybrid that could never return. But, in 2021, Professor Mahmut Miski of Istanbul University published a paper that sent shockwaves through the scientific community. While exploring the Central Taurus Mountains in Turkey, nearly 1,000 miles away from Libya, he came across a rare species of giant fennel known as Ferula druidiana. At first glance, it looked like just another member of the carrot family, but as Miski began to map its traits, a ghost began to arise. The morphological parallels were impossible to ignore. Ferula druidiana features the exact same thick, branching roots with black bark described by Theophrastus. It has a hollow stalk and celery-like leaves. Most tellingly, it possesses an opposite branching structure, a feature that is exceedingly rare in the Ferula genus, but is a dominant trait on the ancient coins of Cyrene. And then there were the seeds. When Miski looked at the fruit of Ferula druidiana, he wasn't looking at a botanical specimen, he was looking at the origin of the heart symbol. They were perfectly heart-shaped, papery, and wind-dispersed, a mirror image of the icons stamped into silver 2,500 years ago. But the real revelation was in the plant's chemistry. Miski conducted a phytochemical analysis of the resin and identified 31 active compounds that validated the ancient cure-all reputation of the plant. He found high concentrations of laserpitin, a compound that acts as a potent anti-inflammatory. He found ferrutinin, a powerful phytoestrogen that acts as a selective estrogen receptor modulator, or, in other words, exactly the kind of chemistry required for an effective contraceptive. Modern medical studies on these compounds have also shown they possess significant anti-cancer properties, particularly against renal and colon cancers. It turns out the supernatural claims of the Greeks weren't myths. They were early observations of complex biochemistry that we are only now beginning to understand. But this rediscovery does beg an important question. How did a plant endemic to North Africa end up in the mountains of Turkey? And the scientific community is currently split on the answer. DNA analysis conducted in 2018 suggests that Ferula druidiana belongs to a lineage of plants from Central Asia, while the North African varieties belong to a different branch. This would suggest that they are distant cousins, rather than the same plant. However, Professor Miski has a different theory, one called the Anatolian ecotype. History tells us that ancient Greek colonists were obsessive about transplanting their most valuable resources. Whenever they established a new colony, they brought the seeds of their culture with them. Miski discovered that the Turkish populations of Ferula druidiana are found almost exclusively near the sites of former ancient Greek villages. He believes that ancient entrepreneurs, seeing the impending extinction in Libya, successfully transplanted the plant to a new home in the Taurus Mountains. Because it refused to be farmed in a traditional garden, it had to be naturalized into the wild. The plant also has a built-in survival mechanism that explains why it was so hard to domesticate. The seeds require cold stratification. They must be exposed to cold, moist conditions for a long period before they will germinate. The warm, Mediterranean climates where the Romans tried to grow it were actually its death sentence. Only in the cold, high altitudes of the Turkish mountains could the seed finally become productive. This theory suggests that the plant didn't go extinct, but rather it was simply hiding somewhere no one thought to look. But before you go searching for Silphium seeds to plant in your own garden, there is a sobering reality to this rediscovery. Despite the breakthrough in the Taurus Mountains, you won't find this ancient resin in any pharmacy or spice market. The plant exists in a state of biological paradox. It has been found, yet it remains just as out of reach as it was in the days of Nero. The current population is so small and localized that any attempt at commercial harvesting would almost certainly destroy the few remaining living plants. Even the biology of the plant defies the fast-paced demands of modern industry. It takes 10 years for a single plant to reach maturity, and even then, it is monocarpic, meaning it will only flower once before it dies. This slow-motion life cycle, combined with its stubborn refusal to grow in traditional agricultural settings, means that for now, the gold of the botanical world is too scarce and too fragile to be bought or sold. So while we might not be able to get our hands on Silphium just yet, the plant has still taught us some powerful lessons. It is a reminder that the most valuable assets on this planet are not the ones we can print or mint. Julius Caesar had 1,500 pounds of Silphium, but all the gold in the Roman treasury couldn't buy the plant back once it was gone. We are living through a modern extinction crisis, losing species every day that might hold the cure for the next pandemic, or the secret to agricultural resilience. When we prioritize short-term extraction and profit over long-term stewardship, we lose things that are literally weight for weight more valuable than precious metals. But ours is also a story of hope. What we see time and again is that nature is more resilient than we give it credit for. The story of the Silphium shows that a remarkable plant can survive for 2 millennia in a forgotten mountain range, waiting for a scientist with a keen eye and a respect for ancient wisdom to find it. So the next time you see a heart, remember that it doesn't just represent an emotion. It represents a plant that gave humanity the gift of reproductive freedom. It represents a biochemical miracle that was almost lost to greed. And if we have indeed found Silphium again, we have a second chance to do what the Romans couldn't, to protect it. Professor Miski is currently working on conservation efforts to ensure that the remaining populations in Anatolia are not over-harvested. He has found that the plant takes 10 years to reach maturity and flowers only once before dying. It is a fragile, slow-motion miracle. If this story appeals to your curiosity, please subscribe to our channel and hit the bell. Every like and every share helps preserve this wisdom and ensures that the species we almost lost will never be forgotten.